back, everybody, to the woodshed. Don't forget to stab that like button on the way in. So here I am actually carving my first ever three-dimensional figure, which I did at the end of January. I just wanted to wait with making this video so I could digest for a while what was going on in my own heart at the time. You see, the end of January and the coming of spring in February has been for the last 5 years an emotionally mixed time for me personally since my dad passed away at that time. And with this particular carving I actually had a different character from the story of Maeve and the Bull in mind, a character called MacRóich who I will carve at a later date. But what seems to have happened is that in the stream of consciousness way that I carve, another character emerged of his own accord, and that character is Fergus MacRóich. And the face and form of the carving turned out to be that of my father, Sam the Man, after whom I am named. That form and expression that my dad developed over time was one of a kind of a world-weary, barely disguised indignation. An indignation that is the grain and marrow of the Western Gael. See, you don't survive 40,000 generations on a rock in the North Atlantic with a pristine mental attitude, and if you do, well, fair play to you. For the world is full of injustice, cheats, liars, backstabbers, and of course politicians. And the repercussions this endless struggle for dominance on a windswept rock has on mental health was called in days gone by melancholy, and everybody endured it as we do the sideways rain. God be with the days when the well-being was counted in the bloodied heads of your enemies. Maybe we are cynical or mad or genius, who knows. But John Dryden once said, "Great genius is to madness near allied, and thin partitions do their bounds divide." The great Irish satirist Jonathan Swift was buried almost 300 years ago in St. Patrick's Cathedral beneath the epitaph, "Hic depositum est corpus Jonathan Swift, ubi seve indignatio ulterius cor lacerari nequit." Here is laid the body of Jonathan Swift, where savage indignation can no longer lacerate his heart. Go forth, voyager, and emulate, if you can, this vigorous champion of liberty. Not entirely surprisingly, Swift's estate went to the founding of a nut house in Dublin. You see, the land of my birth, the land my mother's family haven't left in roughly 10,000 years, give or take, and the landscape that my father's family stumbled into in the 14th century is literally engraved with that epitaph. The body of a warrior king, for those with eyes to see, lies in the very hills around these parts in grim defiance of death. From that other world beyond mortality, he beseeches us to forgive him his silent rage and lost battles. The sleeping king counsels us to scorn the spectre of death and fight like battles never end. To dare to dream that some day a righteous king will take the crown and be fair and generous and wise, and not a backstabbing, cheating, lying, swindling, twisted, power-grubbing shitebag. Fergus MacRóich was that king, if ever so briefly. One of the central characters in the story of Maeve's cattle raid, Fergus is not a hero in the traditional sense. He is a flawed and tragic character, the quintessential anti-hero. Popular among his people and his warriors, known as the Crea Brua, or the Red Branch Knights of Ulster. He was known as the Man, literally. Fergus translates as manly man. But sadly, as is often the way, his fair and magnanimous nature was turned against him. His surname, MacRóich, meant son of a stallion, and he was sadly taken for a ride by his closest entourage. Renowned as a ladies' man, Fergus was said to require the services of an entire camogie team to satisfy his sexual appetites. Either that or one single challenging woman. He wished to marry such a woman, Nessa, daughter of Yoi Solbuya. Nessa agreed to marry Fergus on the condition that her own son, Conahur, by another man, would reign as king for a year and a day. Fergus, trusting his lover and wife-to-be, agreed, and was thus ousted from the kingship, all of life and time being comprised of 1 year and 1 day. Conahur MacNessa wasn't long in the throne when he began making his love of power and control felt throughout Ulster and beyond. He married Maeve, if briefly, with the view to controlling south and north of the island. Maeve had other ideas though, and swiftly divorced him. He then demanded the young and beautiful Deirdre, daughter of Phelimid MacDowell, for his wife. Deirdre also had other ideas, and eloped instead to Scotland with the handsome young Naoise, Prince of Uisneach. Fergus was persuaded by Nessa to go to Scotland with his own son Fiach to make peace on behalf of King Conahur and bring them back. Fergus, being the fair and kind former king, was trusted by the young warrior brothers, and so they agreed to return. But when they returned, Fergus was lured away with the promise of many thick black pints of stout with the lads, which he was under bonds never to refuse. He left Deirdre and Naoise and his brothers in the care of his son Fiach, and while Fergus was away, Owen Dúchach, a minor king seeking favour and personal advancement with King Conahur, slithered into the place where they were, cut all the young warriors' throats, including Fergus's son, as they slept, and stole Deirdre away to the royal fortress at Evamacha. Upon finding his son and the young prince's fine bodies bloodied and soaked in the grovelling ambitions of lesser men, Fergus's heart hardened and cracked. Fergus left Ulster then and rode south into exile, his every thought bent on one thing from that point on. Not a return to power, not for the correcting of a political imbalance, not for Conahur's favour, but for one thing only. Fergus strived and strategized to return north, to find Owen Dúchach, that slithering Slevene that contaminated the world with his petty corruption, track him down and liberate his lowly head from his body. To that end, Fergus wooed Maeve and joined her on the fateful march back into Ulster to retrieve Conahur's bull. As the exiled king at the head of a foreign army, he actively aided the Red Branch Knights and his foster son Cuchulainn to give his former comrades every advantage in return for access to seek his son's murderer. Fergus embodies the singular man, and stands apart from the kings and queens of the tale, and aloof even from kingship itself. Fergus is not the alpha character, as most of the other characters in the Táin vie for that very position. Fergus seeks only to rid the world of moral cowardice. Ultimately, Fergus avenged his son and remained Maeve's favourite lover. You may well learn, as this story unfolds, that moral irony or tragi-comedy is the bedrock of Irish storytelling, as it is life itself. Fergus died as he lived, in the arms of camogie teams and powerful women, stabbed in the back by a cowardly husband. My own father died in exile, though, as with Fergus, it was self-imposed. He died nonetheless of a broken heart, after many a fruitless battle. And this story is for him on his birthday.